In this lesson, we're going to talk about the scheduler. The scheduler is an option for each campaign versus using the sequencer. In a sequencer mode, you simply play one timeline after the next. However, with the scheduler, you can set the repeat dates and the times to actually play back the timelines. And so you can use a scheduler to create a playback pattern. A playback pattern can be set to just play once, play every day of the week, or play on selected days. Sometimes you might run into situations where you have a conflict between two timelines that are set to play at the same time on the scheduler, and you can use priorities to resolve these conflicts. I'm also going to show you pattern selections where you can use different patterns within the schedule to easily view when timelines are going to play back. And I'm also going to show you how to schedule sequences, essentially grouping timelines so you can just change a sequencer that's on the scheduler and that would affect all the timelines that are part of that sequence. So let's begin. So currently our campaign demo is selected, and once it's selected we can review over here under its properties, and you can see that the sequence is by default selected, and we can switch over here to the sequences module. And in the sequences module, we can select which timeline is going to play in which order. And therefore, if for example we didn't want to play timeline 3, I can select it and I can delete it. If I wanted to change the order of the playback, I can simply select a timeline. If I want to play timeline 4 before timeline 1, simply drag and drop it and let go. And now it's going to play timeline 4 first, then switch to timeline 1, then to timeline 2, and repeat this sequence forever. So using the sequences is very simple and works well if you just want to repeat over and over your timelines. However, if you wanted to actually play your timelines in a particular date or time, you can use the scheduler. So let's switch back to the timelines and again go to the properties of our campaign demo. But this time we'll click on the scheduler button. So you'll notice this button right here, the sequences will change to the scheduler at the campaign level. And now we can go into the schedules module. And over here I'm presented with the user interface for the schedules, where I can set particular timelines to play on set dates and times. To select a particular date range, you can hold on to Control key on your keyboard and select the days that you like to actually view. So in our case, we're going to go only on the 31st, 30th, 29th. So you can easily select the days that you want to see. If I only want to look at the 25th of the month, or the 25th and the 27th. So it's very easy to select the days that you want. If you wanted to select a range of dates, if I wanted to select this whole week, I can select the 22nd, hold down the Shift key, and select the whole week. You can use the calendar date range to move back and forth in the months. So I can go forward 1 month or back. The pattern selection buttons right here on top allows me to keep the same selected dates but move in a specific pattern. So if I wanted to move 1 week back, I can simply click on this button, then move another week back. If I only select particular days, let's say the 8th, the 10th, 11th, and 13th, and again wanted to move 1 week forward or back. If I wanted to actually move 1 day forward, but again keep the same pattern selection, or go back. And the pattern selection is very useful because let's say, for example, you've configured timelines to play on the weekend and you just want to jump from one weekend to the next to verify that you've configured the right timelines. And so all you have to do is select the weekends and use the pattern selection to jump ahead from one weekend to the next. And now that we've covered date selection, let's go ahead and see how to actually configure the timeline to play on a particular date. So we'll select timeline 1, drag and drop it to the 9th, let go. And over here now we have a timeline that's going to play, but this timeline is very short. It's only 1 minute in length. So let's go ahead and set a custom duration and play it for 10 hours. And you can see that now the timeline stretches and it's much longer. And on the 11th, I actually want to go ahead and play timeline 2. And timeline 2 has a 3-hour length, so you see it's much longer. And on the 12th, I go ahead and set timeline 3. And this timeline 3 is 2 hours. Now the length of the scheduler or the scale is set as 1 day, and you can scroll all the way to the back to just look at the full 24 hours. But if you wanted to just make it a lot smaller so you can just see more of the day, you can zoom in and zoom out over here. Right now we're basically looking at 20 seconds per 1 pixel. So let's go ahead and change to be 100 seconds per 1 pixel. And you can see that now we can view almost one full day, so you don't have to scroll as much. So what we've done so far is configured the timelines to play on particular days, and essentially what we've done is create patterns. And these playback patterns are listed over here, and I can give them any name I want. So if I wanted to call this my demo 1, press on enter. And so it will be easier to manage if you give meaningful names to your patterns. If you wanted to delete a pattern, simply select it right here, click on the delete button, and you're able to delete any set pattern. So far I showed you how to set particular timelines on set dates. What if you wanted to play a timeline on every day of the week or on every other day of the week? And for that you can actually set the repeat times. So let's go ahead and drag timeline 1 back into the 9th of the month. Again, set the duration. But now this timeline is only going to play once. And now under the repeat configuration drop down, I can set once, daily, or weekly. If I set daily, this timeline is going to repeat itself every day of the week from the start till the end date. So let me go ahead and make a little more room here. So you can set the start date and the end date for the daily. I also can set the weekly, and then again I need to set the start date and the end date, and I need to select the days that I actually want to have this timeline play. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and configure this timeline to play every day of the week except the weekends. And I'll set this to play for the whole month, so until the 31st from the 1st of the month. And let's go ahead and make more room so we can see our schedules. And let's select the whole month, so hold on the shift key. And you can see that now my timeline is going to play every day of the week except the weekends, just the way I've set it. Now if you change the timeline, let's say if I make it a little bit longer, it's going to again affect all of the schedules. So it's very easy to configure a weekly pattern. Now this works great for me, but let's say that on a particular date or time I have a special event. So I want to interrupt my regular scheduled playback to go ahead and play a different timeline. So what I can do is I can set priority, and so what I'll do is I'll select my second timeline and drag and drop it to the 4th of the month where I have this special event. And so notice now there's a conflict, so I don't know if my timeline 1 is going to play or my timeline 2, and so I can resolve this conflict with priority. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and set the priority for my timeline 1 to be actually a low priority. And so now what's going to happen is that my timeline 1 is going to play on the weekdays just the way I've set it. And so during the week I'm going to have my regular scheduled programming. However, on the 4th of the month I'm going to be interrupted with timeline 2 and then go back to my regular programming. One side note I'd like to mention is that it's very important that if you're using the scheduler and you haven't scheduled any content, you're just going to get a black screen. Now this could be a good thing if, for example, you didn't want to really run any presentation during the night. Simply don't schedule any content and you'll have a black screen during those times. Of course, you can also use the power savings features to do that as well. However, if you're troubleshooting your campaign and you're not seeing anything on the screen and you are using the schedule, always go back to the schedule and make sure that you do have content scheduled. Also, another important note is that the scheduler runs per the time and the date of the computer that's running the signage player. So if you're not getting the result that you're expecting, be sure to check the date and the time of the computer that's running the presentation. So far, everything we've done had to do with scheduling individual timelines and putting them on the scheduler. However, sometimes you want to actually group the timelines into a single collection and then schedule that collection. We support that through the scheduling of sequences. In other words, you can create a sequence, which is just a list of timelines, and then schedule that. Now here, under the Signage Studio, I'm going to go back into sequences. I will create myself a new sequence, and I will set the timelines that I would like to play and the order. So I'll go ahead and change the order, and I'll go ahead and call this my sequence 1 and create this another sequence and add more timelines to it as well. So I have sequence 1 configured as well as sequence 2. And each sequence, as I mentioned, is just a list of timelines and the order of the playback of those timelines. Now I'll go ahead and switch to schedules. And notice over here that before we were working with the timelines, now when we switch to the sequences, we have the two sequences that I've created, which is again the group of the timelines. And I can drag and drop just like before And notice that the length of my sequence is now the total length of the timelines that are member of that sequence. And go ahead and drag over sequence 2. Set the custom duration just like before. And pretty much you have all the same properties as before. You can set the repeat once, daily, weekly. So nothing really changes other than the fact that now when using sequences, you essentially are dealing with a group of timelines. And this is really quite flexible because you're not limited to scheduling just sequences. You can mix and match. So I can still take individual timelines and drag and drop those directly on the scheduler. So now I'm using both sequences as well as timelines directly on the scheduler. So I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and thanks for watching.